feels like ages since I've done this, because I filmed all the others like 3 weeks ago, and, you know, I scheduled them, so it feels like it's been ages. Anyway, I'm Clacker the Geek, and welcome back to the James Bond Marathon series. Today, we're on the Timothy Dalton era, and we're going to be talking about The Living Daylights from 1987. This was the first of only 2 films that Timothy Dalton got as Bond, which is a real shame that he only got 2 films as Bond. Yeah, how was this first film for him? Let's find out. So let's talk about Timothy Dalton as James Bond himself. Now, before I started watching Bond, Dalton was the actor that I was most familiar with. Obviously, he was in Doctor Who, Once and the End of Time, but he was also the villain in Hot Fuzz, and he's also been in the recent Toy Story movies, which is crazy. But anyway, as Bond, I can safely say he's the most underrated. He's probably my second favourite behind Roger Moore. He's dark, gritty, ruthless. He's definitely the closest for me to the Ian Fleming Bond. He's a ruthless killer. But saying that, he was always fun to watch. He was always, you know, he could be charming, he could do the action brilliantly. He often did his own stunts, especially in the pre-title sequence when he's holding onto the van. That is Timothy Dalton on the van, which is incredible. And he was really passionate about the character. He knew what he wanted. I mean, I believe he read all the books beforehand, but he knew what he wanted to do with the character, and he gave us that. I do think he is better in Licence to Kill because the tone is a lot darker and a lot more violent, so it's more tailored to what Dalton can do, but as a debut entry, it's still fab. Side note, the way that Dalton says "strawberry jam of him" in this film is something that's always going to stick with me. Hello, I'm Timothy Dalton, and welcome to Licence to Grow, the James Bond cookery show. After last week's Roger Moore extraordinaire with pork pie and quiche, we bring things back to basics with a favourite of mine: toast, with a side order of strawberry jam. Now let's talk about Cara, played by Marion DeBow, our Bond girl of the film. I really like Cara. I think she feels like a very grounded character. You know, she gets in some of the action, especially in the final, you know, the finale of the film with all the armies coming at it, and she just does some of the sniper stuff, but she also gets scared when it's appropriate, but she's not like a damsel in distress, you know. She needs saving all the time. It's a nice little blend of the two, and she just feels like a grounded character, and I always found her a very likeable person. Now let's talk about the villains. Oh dear. Oh bloody dear. These have got to be some of the worst villains in Bond. So our main villain, Brad Whittaker, played by Jodon Baker, who actually was recast in the Pierce Brosnan films as one of Bond's CIA agent friends, and he was better in those, but oh god, Brad Whittaker's a poor villain. I mean, he's barely in the film, he barely does anything, and he just doesn't have any screen presence or any menace to him at all. Brad Whittaker, though, is just poor villain, and he really does drag the film down for me. I mean, I guess the henchmen are alright, you know, you got Necros, who's like the sort of the more physical match for Bond, and he's alright. Kozgov isn't too bad, you know, the Russian defector guy. He's kind of interesting, I guess. It's kind of cool, but again, really poor set of antagonists. Also, I have a bone to pick with this. Right, how the hell does Kozgov survive this? How do you survive that? I know you're meant to question the logic of Bond films, but it's not a criticism as well, but it's just like, how does he survive that? Overall, I think the story it's a fairly simple but effective story. It's not overly complicated. It's you know, kind of your standard Bond thing with like the Cold War and the KGB, Soviet stuff. You know, with Kozgov as like a Russian defector, there's some nice intrigue there. There's some kind of cool things about like sort of weapons dealing as well, sprinkled in the film. But yeah, it's a simple but effective story, and it kind of feels familiar without rehashing older films. It feels familiar. Speaking of feeling familiar, you've got John Glenn directing this film, who directed all the films in the 1980s. He'd been directing since For Your Eyes Only with Roger Moore. He directed the last few of his, and directed both of Dalton's films, and you know what you get when you have a John Glenn Bond film. He has that certain style that you recognise, but never feeling like formulaic or stale. You know, Living Daylights definitely different from Licence to Kill, which is also different from A View to a Kill, for instance. But I always loved John Glenn's style. It was always, you know, very fun and entertaining. And you know, they could be intense. Like, this film has some increased intense moments, you know, with Dalton at the helm, but there was always that balance of intensity and fun, and that always made it enjoyable to watch for me. And it, you know, you can do dark and gritty without it feeling miserable, which is why I much prefer the Dalton like grittiness as opposed to Daniel Craig. And speaking of John Glenn's direction, his direction lends so well to the action in this film. You know, some of his others, the action was a bit lacking, like A View to a Kill. It was kind of, yeah, it wasn't that great, I don't think. But this film, oh my god, the action is brilliant. Whether it's the pre-title sequence, which introduces Dalton perfectly, whether it's the sniper section, whether it's the Aston Martin chasing the snow and the cello case escape, and you know, the hiding in the little barn. That is probably the best action scene in the film. And then you've got the Hercules takeoff and all the armies coming in the finale of the film, which is again breathtaking stuff, and it's all so well done, and it's just a joy to watch. Also, the music in this film is fantastic. It's the last film in the franchise to have mainstay John Barry composing the score, who'd been there since the beginning, and his score is excellent. He does it just the right time. You know, the music cues in just the right places, and the score is really good. There's a nice variety in the score, and the way that he manages to weave the title song into the score, it's done perfectly. Those are probably the best bits of the score. Speaking of the Aha song, you know, the title song, apparently there were troubles between Barry and, you know, the band, but he birthed one of the best Bond songs we've ever had. It's so 80s, it's so energetic, and I love it to pieces. And I think that's it, really, all I have to say about this film. It's not, you know, it's not a film that I can necessarily go that deep into, but it's such a fun romp. It feels like a very classic Bond film, but still feeling fresh at the same time. And, you know, Dalton is fantastic. And, yeah, overall, it's really entertaining, very watchable, and really enjoyable film. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. So that's the end of the video, guys. What do you think of The Living Daylights? What do you think of Timothy Dalton as Bond? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And join me next week, where we give you tomorrow's news next week, and Tomorrow Never Dies. I'll see you then.